How many deathbed interviews have you done?
65.
65.
Yeah.
When did you do them?
I was 19 till I was 20.
Okay. Why?
It was a prickly hair that I was just like, oh, I think this would be very interesting. So I started interviewing coworkers, friends, family members. I ended up interviewing girls that I thought were attractive in high school. I would just be like, hey, can I buy you Starbucks? And I want to interview you about your life. And
Did
really
you record it like audio?
I recorded the first 12.
Okay.
And then I realized people were less honest when they knew they were being recorded. And then I was less present when I knew it was being recorded. And so the point of them was to understand myself first. I didn't know that I knew I was supposed to help people. I didn't know how. I knew I didn't have the life experience. I was 19. And I just at a certain point had to trust, like, I'm just going to lean back. I'm going to have genuine conversations. And that's all I'm supposed to do right now is genuine conversations. I have certain questions that are like guiding us in a certain direction, but we went off the rails most of the time. And I let people talk about, oh, that really grabbed them and that really like led them down a path. Let's just continue down there and ask my follow-up questions. But I did it to learn about myself first and then to collapse time with intentionality. And I still talk about this, 12 years later. I have 43,000 years of life experience trapped in my head from the interviews of other people. So yeah, I started doing friends, family, coworkers. I interviewed my now wife. And then I talked to a friend's grandfather and he was just like brain blasts of knowledge and wisdom and, oh my gosh, here's what I did wrong. And he was so open with me the way that people my age weren't and coworkers weren't and other people that I was around weren't willing to be or capable of being, I guess. And so I was like, ooh, old people would be great. What do we think about at the end? And somebody who knows that they don't have a whole lot of time, like they're not coming back from this stage 4 pancreatic cancer. This is it. And I want to know what that person's going to think about. Because then maybe I can start prioritizing for myself. Again, it was selfish at first. And then now I can teach it to other people, thankfully, since I got out of my own way. I kind of got it out of my system. And then it became an obsession where I was like, oh, I just love understanding why we became who we became. And it's all stories. It's all a bunch of things that we've tied. This thing I was told when I was 2, or that I was shown when I was 3, or that I told myself when I was 4, tells me why I'm easily frustrated now, or why I have a hot temper now. And then we never question those. We just go, oh, I'm just mild-mannered. Oh, I'm just a hothead. Oh, I'm just a very impatient person. And we never go back and go like, who told me that? Who gave me permission to continue doing that? And then you start realizing, oh, I give myself permission every time I repeat it. So I reactivate my permission system that says I'm allowed to still be a hothead. I'm still allowed to be a distracted person who can't really get their mind wrapped around anything solid and like do anything for a long period of time. So yeah, that we all relate back to stories that we've been telling ourselves for a long time.
What was the most common regret?
It was all around family. The time I didn't spend, things I didn't see, my kids' first steps, so-and-so's birthday or wedding or practice, or like the guy I interviewed that made over $500 million. His like, I said, what if you could go back and change one thing in your life, what would you go back and change? And he said, can I have 3 of them? And in my head, I was like, yeah, dying man's wish. Like, yeah, you can have 3 of them. And he said, I would have gone to one of each of my son's baseball practices. He had 3 sons. He hadn't seen him in 12 years when I interviewed him. He actually he died, I think 5 days after I interviewed him. And he said, not that would have changed something, but it would have been the spark that could have changed something. Like maybe it would become a habit. If I went to one of them, it would have become a habit and I would have enjoyed it and I would have wanted to continue doing it. He said, I've never went to one of their practices. He went to one of their college graduations and he went to one of their weddings, and like no other significant life events does he remember. And then I saw a man who was genuinely dying alone and empty, and his ex-wives had a lot of his money and his sons had the rest of it. And no thanks was given. They hadn't seen him in 12 years. He had met, I think, 2 out of his 9 grandchildren, and he had met none of his great-grandchildren. He was in his early 80s. And so I just saw a man who had like on paper done everything. Because that generation as well, I'm a good father if I'm providing financially. And again, this is part of what I see the early versions of this in young men that I work with. This is why I like working with young men. Because even if you're already doing some of these things, it's not, you haven't told yourself yet that it's too late to change. And I think I remember talking to a lot of these older people that at some point, it wasn't even a conscious decision, but there was a certain tipping point that said, it's too late for me to change. This is just who I am now. And that story, like they've taken their hands off the wheel and said, I have no control over this anymore. This is just who I am now. And they've relegated themselves to, as long as I'm providing financially, then I'm a good father, then I'm a good husband, then I'm a good whatever. And no matter how many people showed them differently, the wives divorcing them, the sons not wanting to talk to them not feeling really close to any of their personal friends, nothing ever was able to like really jolt them out of that thing that said, this is just who I am now.
Does that change, like when you heard that, did that change your perception on making money?
It was hard because I didn't have any at the time. I was living in a trailer. It didn't change at the moment how I viewed money, because I did like a lot of people and was like, well, those are nice problems to have. Like, let me have some money and then I'll start thinking about those things. Mm-hmm. But I think along the way, as I started getting some success, status, acclaim, whatever you call it, I think it started changing, luckily from the beginning, how I started thinking about money. And that it can't just be for the sake of this thing, because that's vacuous. Like, it feels really good, but then you accumulate stuff. And then at a certain point, stuff doesn't do anything for you, and you start optimizing for peace and peace of mind and safety and security for the people that matter to you. So I think that's what it did, is it flipped what I thought money was going to be. Now it's just people and the people I choose to have around me. It's my friends, it's my family, it's the family that I grow, it's my close network of people that I have always held in much higher regard than any project that I've ever closed.
Were there any conversations that particularly like shaped you?
Yeah. Well, his name was Frank. I think his was the most like, oh shit, because this is the most amount of money I'd ever heard of at the time. Mm-hmm. And that didn't do it for him. But at the time he told himself it did. But he said all along the way, I knew it didn't. But I just kept telling myself, because I don't know how to be anything else. Like, at what point do you stop and just go, I'm going to be a good dad now. From now on, I'm going to be a good dad. And he never had that day, because that pain was never as bad as the pain of like, I may need to sacrifice a lot of stuff that I've really been optimizing for and building for in order to transition into being a good dad. But at the end, he had said, like, I would have traded all of it for a $48,000 a year salary and like being a great dad. Like, let's say even on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
He said, I would rather be
$48,000 a year. And this is, you know, in the 60s, 70s, 80s.
Do you think that, like, how does that shape your opinion on vanity? I think a lot of people are chasing vanity right now.
I mean, I think it works when you don't have anything else. So I think vanity is a really easy thing to suck into the vacuum. So we talk, like Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, talks about the existential vacuum that we have. When something's removed, you don't control what goes back into it unless you choose what goes back into it. And I talk about like this pit that a lot of men feel, that there's something missing, something I didn't have as a child. And usually it's like safety, security, relationship, family. But because you're not choosing those things to optimize for, what gets pulled in is money and the girls and the cars and the boats and the whatever else. And I think vanity is just the easiest thing because it can be used anywhere. Like for a lot of people, we talked about this with entrepreneurs, their family, the mask of being a family man is part of the vanity metric for them. I want to be seen as a good person. I was listening to Mike Cernovich on Tucker Carlson's podcast. I made a Facebook post about this probably 3 weeks ago. I was sitting at like 2 a.m. thinking, and he talked about this ayahuasca journey. And like the main question that was presented to him is, are you wanting to be a good father, or do you want to be seen as the man who's a good father? And that those two things are not the same.
Yeah.
Because you're going to optimize for the visuals of it.
Yeah.
Or you can optimize for the real thing. And it's really hard to do both. Because in the activity of doing this, you're not necessarily thinking about like, what's the most YouTube optimized version of this like thumbnail that I'm going to do, or this keyword thing. You're just being good and present and honest and decent. And the metrics aren't even occurring to you.
Yeah.
Whereas most people are doing only what would test well in a focus group. If I want to be this masculine something influencer, how do I need to present myself in order to get the most clicks toward that thing?
What's the difference? So I had a moment recently where it was a night I was feeling really emotional, and my algorithm clicked in, and for some reason just that whole, like for a 5-hour period, I was feeling sick, so I was just on my phone. And for like that whole night, it was like best man speeches, father of the bride dances, lots of like dad, kid, or lost loved one, lots of motivation, lots of like, just like every 5 reels, I was like crying. Yeah. And I just wrote down, I wrote a bunch of I want to be statements, which I recognize like in retrospect, that wasn't healthy.
I messaged you about it.
Yeah. I attached to it what I want people to say about me.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to say I'm a great dad. I'm never going to post my kids online, and I'm never going to post about being a dad online. But the people that know me, I'm like, I want them to say that I am this.
But only because you are that.
Yeah. What's the difference in there? What's the difference between that and the vanity that we're talking about?
Because they're optimizing for the view of it by the outside world.
Am I not doing the same thing?
Your kids. No, if you could have that said about you and you knew wholeheartedly that you weren't, how would that feel?
Pretty awful.
So to a lot of people, that wouldn't feel any different. So think about the guys who get divorced.
Yeah.
Online, socially. I'm thinking about a specific guy who is like off on boats and on yachts and helicopters and blah, blah, blah. And then like once every 6 weeks, my wife and my kids, remember guys, I'm still a dad and a husband, but I've been gone 28 out of the last 30 days. And then he all of a sudden gets blindsided by divorce by his wife. And this is like a big time entrepreneur. In my head, I just went, yeah, no shit. And how could that be a surprise? It's only a surprise because you weren't paying attention.
What do you think is the danger of how masculinity is represented right now?
Again, it's a performance thing right now. I just have to perform actions.
Don't you think, would you agree that there's a lot of people that are trying to be the faces of masculinity?
Very much so.
What is your perception of that whole almost like right-wing, red pill energy of the modern man?
Well, the fact that we're finding out, or there's a lot of musings that a lot of them are gay.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. Yeah. But like, again, it totally goes
along
who's
with gay?
A lot of them.
Which one? Allegedly.
It's like the whole, Grindr service crash.
It's not Tate.
No. I don't believe so.
Okay.
I've known.
Like you talk about like Nick Fuentes?
I don't know what he is.
I think.
So that's the thing too. Like, I think he's performative.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, this is a kid who's learned how to really say the right things online. But if he sat down with Tony Robbins, he would be like, I don't know. I don't even know what I genuinely think and feel and believe, because you're only talking to people. Like, this is kind of the hard thing that people do now, especially with the debate culture, is I'm either going to talk to people who agree with every single thing I say and are never going to push me on anything, or people who think I'm an evil monster and I can just like meme and troll my way through it. Like his Piers Morgan interview. Yeah. He was just trolling the entire time. And when somebody's trying to be honest or like really put your feet to the fire and he goes, yeah, I'm racist. Yeah, I'm a Nazi. Who gives a fuck? Yeah. Like, he's only pandering to the audience. And if you're not clued in on what he's doing, like Piers thought he got him to back down on the, where there are actually 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust. And he's like, yeah, sure. And he took that as like a genuine statement. If you give people credit as though they're being genuine, you're going to miss the entire game that's being played. And so people who are so disconnected from a genuine, like, heart-centered thing, I can tell you're just being honest right now. I can tell you're just being who you naturally are and how you feel about something. If you can't tell me how you feel about something, not what you think, but how you feel about something, I do this with couples a lot. It tells you a lot about like how much people have disconnected from any sense of truth for themselves. It's what's most readily available for me to market to whoever my audience is. So I always ask boyfriends or husbands how they feel about the woman that they're with. And I'll always ask girlfriends or wives what they think about their husband. And both of them will tell me the exact opposite. I'll say, how do you feel about your wife? And Amanda's going to tell me all the things he thinks about her. Not the same. I'll ask her what she thinks about her husband, and she'll tell me exactly how she feels. Like, we have to understand that that's the language people are using. And if you're not good at doing the other language, if you're not good at communicating that way, there's probably a humongous disconnect in how you relate to one another as well.
What do you think about him? Like, what about that culture resonates with people? There's an audience for a reason. Why?
I think insecurity is a big one. I think the fast talking, highly manipulative way of speaking and like cult building, let's say, good, bad, ugly, whatever. The thing that captivates people is you can wear your insecurities as armor and you can wield it around like a sword that you can swing at anybody who comes and tries to get you to be honest and genuine. And I think it's actually, this route feels easier than settling down and like being honest with yourself and taking a really hard look at yourself. And you'll push off the consequences until later. So if I can just speak faster and have hotter takes and be more viral and do the craziness as much as I possibly can, I never have to slow down and take a look.
I mean, that's a good psychoanalysis of the people, but what about their audience?
That's what I'm saying. They're teaching the audience to do the same thing.
You think that that's the effect? Do you think that someone that watches that, I almost think that it becomes this representation. Like I think those things deep down, And I'm almost scared that I think these things deep down.
Audacity is probably a high scoring thing for those people as well. Yeah. Like they say the things I wish I could say.
Yeah. I'm not confident enough, but if I was, that's the way I wish I would have said it.
Yeah. I just had a conversation back and forth with my Claude for like all my content. Like I'll have it create my structure for my content, then I go in and fill it in with my actual thoughts and feelings. And it was like this video I saw on ethical cult building and like, how do you get people behind this thing? And a lot of it is he's willing to say the things that I think. And this is how I run my Facebook a lot of times. It's like seemingly hot takes that can look very surface level. And then I fill in the details in my comment section. When people come in to argue, that's where I fill in the gaps and the nuance and the context and the things that I actually think and feel. But I have to strip all that away to make a post that works and that people are going to respond to.
Because measured people aren't interesting.
No, if I posted like my entire thoughts on something, that post is going to get 2 likes from my mom and my grandma and maybe an old preschool teacher. But if I post the most stripped down version of that I know you can possibly get angry at. I study a lot of comedians, and this is like the hook to their joke is the most like dastardly thing they can think of. Why are women always, and then insert the craziness.
Yeah.
And then they'll take you on a journey and they'll craft a story. And then by the end, you're like, fuck, I agree with this guy. Damn it, I agree with him. But because they've stripped away all the things that you can agree with and just state the premise. Tate does this very well. I think, Fuentes does this very well. Like most polarizing figures do this very well. They take away all the context and nuance. But I think unfortunately you become a slave to the virality metrics. It's almost like when you hear Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about like he trained himself on the quotes. Just create a quote, a little 5-second snippet of like what's wow and impactful about space. And then I can like ingratiate people into what I'm going to say holistically about space and the beauty of it and all the other things. We've optimized ourselves into just like this tiny little hole of virality and vacuousness with no depth behind it, which is why I think the depth is important because it's going away.
I think there's an element too where most of these guys are live streamers. And so there's an element of like, there's this raw, organic reality TV replacement.
Yeah.
But do you see them as a net negative or just like a necessary evil?
Net negative. I think anything that's going to make people take a look is positive. But I think what people do when like what they tell you to do next is what maybe makes a lot of these things negative. So like I think about the red pill space a lot and I jab at the red pill space a lot because I think it's funny, but they'll always talk about I'm being descriptive, not prescriptive. So I'm saying what's happening. I'm not telling you what you should do about it, but then where are you leaving people? You're leaving them with just the questions and then they get to go fill it in with no tools on how to make their lives better because of it. It's just, I have this thing. So 70% of divorces are initiated by women. That sounds great on a podcast. And it sounds great as like, they're the problem. But why? What's
is
the reason?
Is that a real stat?
Oh yeah. It's a huge thing on Red Pill podcasts that they like start throwing out at people.
I'm saying, is that stat accurate?
I believe so. Yes.
That's crazy.
But then what would you think, like, why would you think that that's the case? Because let's say in theory, if it was equal, then it'd be 50-50. Really, it's only a 20% difference from 50-50. But why would that be more accurate? My wife pays all the bills. She does all the paperwork. She does all the things that would require that because I'm over here producing and taking care of my family. Of course, she's the only person that would do that. Like, yeah, she's the one who would go down to the office and do that. But like, he wouldn't disrupt the status quo, especially if it's because of him that this is kind of a miserable marriage to be in. Why would he be the one to leave that if he's the one who's primarily making it miserable to be in? We don't ask why. And that's, I think, the part of the issue.
Do you have this, do you have optimism towards this demographic of people? Or do you think that in comparison to, let's just say like you've seen pre-2016, there was a culture, post-2016, there's a culture, post-2020, there's a culture.
Yeah.
And then now it's like a little bit different, but it's still kind of in alignment with where 2020 was at. Do you have optimism that things are trending in a positive direction, or do you think that this is just kind of a status quo that is the new normal?
No, I think it's getting more negative, but it will act as a really good springboard towards something more positive. So I think we're being pulled toward the fringes. Everybody's being pulled in this direction or this direction. I'm actually making something right now kind of to figure out how to help people navigate that, especially young men navigate that. I don't want to say like the name of it now, but it's essentially a fight back toward where you actually stand. So there's a city over here, and you're being told and yelled and screamed at, you have to be with us or you have to be with us. Religion, politics, anything social, anything cultural, any memeing, everything is tribal. Everything is saying fucking scatter to the corners. And don't you dare come out here, because out here we're going to snipe you. Out here we're going to do something to you. And I think this is the only place that truth exists. And I think that's the danger. And we see this in politics a lot right now, right? It's absolutely this way or it's absolutely that way.
Yeah.
But wait, what about all these different factors? What about all these different things? And also, what matters to you? Like, how do you see it? Strip away of everything else. Before you ever watch anybody else's take on it, I want to know what you think. And I don't think almost anybody actually does that. They go straight to what this other person thinks. Thank God. Like you said, they're a spokesperson. So now they can go, oh, now I know what to think about this. And nobody tries or optimizes for, what do I think about this first before I reach out to my safety blanket of I get to do what the group says.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to see things and be like, yeah, I have a lot of positive hope, because I think we're seeing like almost like the death of like individualism. Well,
the hope is only on the other side of opening up the closet, like looking at one of the demons and going like, all right, time to shake hands. Let's talk.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time doing that when I had no money, when I was doing nothing. I would stare at myself in the mirror for an hour a day, 3 days a week for about 18 months. I met all of them. I talked to the demons, and they were like, you have to start falling in love with this thing that you are deeply insecure about. And it's never a perfect science. And it's never something that you're going to wake up one day and be like, all right, I'm cured. Like, let's go out here and be perfectly confident, because those people are scary too, because nobody's perfectly confident. And that's like the danger of these overly confident personalities that we see online now, is that it convinces you that you're doing something wrong if you ever question yourself at all. Because these people look like they don't question themselves ever. I talk to like wildly powerful people that we would all look out online and look up to. I'm friends with some of them, and I know their insecurities. And like, I have to remind them that those insecurities are healthy. It lets me know that you're still a person. You haven't tried to ascend past yourself, your humanness, your depth, your complexity, anything like that.
How many narcissists have you met?
I don't know, probably a lot. There's a whole spectrum there. It's an actual diagnosis, so it's really hard to, it's a word that's thrown around too much. We all have narcissistic tendencies, some more than others. My good friend we were talking about before this, like heavily into that, like narcissistic tendency for sure. Do I believe him to be a narcissist? No. Do I believe him to be somebody who is acting out a childhood wound a lot? And attention is where I knew my parents cared, even if it was negative attention. So I'm just going to get all the attention I can possibly get. I was talking to my friend Sean about this. It was a fitness influencer on TikTok that just got like canceled. Scotty K Fitness.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, the fact that you can't watch those videos and not see a deeply troubled person is scary.
Everybody wants attention until it stops being positive.
Yeah. Then you're like, fuck this.
And then you're like,
well, now we need to keep our privacy.
Yeah. I guess the place I'd want to bring it back to you for is like, if you could define what true masculinity is, what would it be?
The willingness to shoulder responsibility.
Okay, break that down. What's the difference between that right now versus generations before?
At its core, that's what it is. We've widened the breadth of what it means. So before it was only providing financially. The financial responsibility is on your shoulders, and that's what masculinity looked like, or like feeding the family. So we can go all the way back to like hunter-gatherer. If I brought food home and we were able to like live throughout the winter, I'm providing in my masculine role, in my masculine essence. We've now widened the breadth to now like I have to accompany other people's emotions and difficult, complex situations inside of my business, inside of my family. You know, something happens with my kids that is really hard for them to process and navigate. I have to be able to hold that space. Or my wife comes with something that I don't really care about, but like it's deeply affecting her, so it needs to matter to me. I think we're now widening what that's supposed to look like. But I think in mass, it is the willingness to shoulder responsibility inside of yourself and also externally. My team, my spouse, my friends, people who rely on me in any capacity, my willingness to shoulder the responsibility of their needs, financial, emotional, mental, whatever, is what I believe masculinity looks like.
You're housing a little bit of femininity in there, like feminine energy. The idea of balancing someone's emotions, that's a nurturing characteristic, but you're saying that that's part of the responsibility of a masculine man.
Yeah, because we do have a role in carrying other people's emotions. Again, your wife. I know there's a whole thing around she's got to deal with that or let other women deal with that with her. I just think that's part of our responsibility. Again, I think we're widening the breadth of what responsibility looks like.
Do you think that on average guys do a good job of this?
No.
Why?
We haven't been taught to optimize for it. We also haven't been rewarded for it appropriately.
What's a healthy dynamic of that look like?
I think my marriage is a good example. This is why I have people over at my house. Like, listen to me and my wife talk. Here's my perspective. Here's your perspective. Everybody's feelings are valid. How you felt about it, completely valid. How I feel about it, completely valid. Now we negotiate what we do about it. Like, there's no negotiating the emotions. There's no negotiating what I think and what I feel and what it meant to me. I'm not trying to negotiate you out of how it feels to you. What we need to do now is navigate what we do from here on out. How do we navigate this appropriately where both of us feel the way we need to feel about it? And I think it's a hard thing to do. And it's also, you have to slow down and like set your own emotions aside when it's the other person's turn. And that's a really hard thing to do. Because if you say something that like lights me up, I want to butt in. Do I have the wherewithal to sit back and go, I'm going to have my turn as long as I trust my partner? But that's what's hard. You have to build that when things are good. And nobody wants to talk about difficult things when things are good. You only talk about difficult things when an active like disagreement or fight is happening. How good are you going to be at repairing your own damage or your own trauma, your own craziness when you're actively trying to protect yourself, possibly against somebody that you don't know wholeheartedly is on your team?
So was that established before you guys got married?
Yeah. I mean, part of it was established before we met. I've been writing about my wife and who she is and who my children are and who I am to them. I've been dreaming about my kids since I was 18. And so I've been optimizing for what my family life is supposed to look like. And it wasn't a perfect representation, but it was damn close.
What did you write?
It was like 6 pages. I take people through like a process like this now of like what your future life is supposed to look like, because now your job is just go get it. So when I talk to young guys about identity, it's like the basis of what I teach now. It's you in 20 years. Who is he? And I have people write a letter to themselves in 20 years. I also have them write a letter from their future self to their current self. And what you start realizing is that something you set outside of yourself, which is you in 20 years, when you have to write that letter back to your current self, because I have a bunch of prompts, but like you have to really sit down with it and like go light up a cigar and let this be a process. Let this be 2 or 3 hours of you communing with your future self, and then have him start giving you advice back and have him start restructuring what's the difference between him and you, and have him tell you. And you start stepping into kind of this alter ego role, but then you start to realize all this wisdom that's encaptured in this letter back to my current self, I made all that up. Kyree didn't give that to me. Nobody else gave me this wisdom. It's already in here somewhere. This is a hard thing, not having like a coming of age ceremony in America as men, is we never wake up one day and feel like a man. We tell ourselves that when I'm 18, I'm a man now and I have to have it all figured out, and that kind of muddies the waters a bit. But we don't have this thing that is a hard set, now I'm a man. And so we don't ever really try to prepare for it. If you saw me at 18, 19, 20 years old, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, I had my first child at 27, you would have seen the entire way, this guy's just supposed to be a father and a husband. It's because I had these conversations really early with myself.
Why?
I got to interview people who were about to die and know what they missed out on and know like deeply what they weren't going to be able to ever go back and fix. And it was all qualitative. There were no extra numbers. There were no extra views. Views weren't that important back then, but like there was no extra accolades that they were looking for. It was all qualitative. Can I feel the way I've told myself money's going to make me feel? And unfortunately, a lot of times people have to make the money to start realizing that hole is still there. And I've had a lot of people talk about like, I'd rather be crying in a Lamborghini than a Prius. I've had a lot of guys cry to me in their Lamborghinis. And that's, I think, a deeper hell than never having made the money. Because if you're broke, and I remember being like this, and you tell yourself that money's going to solve it, you still have the hope that money's going to solve it. What about when you have the money and the hole's still there? You have nothing to tell yourself now that this is going to fill that hole. This is going to finally do it for me. Most guys try to do more money, and they felt it empty. Like they found it empty. I have this whole thing on like my VSL about this kid going up a mountain and he's finding a treasure at the top. And basically, long story short, he opens up the treasure box and there's a note at the bottom that just says, the treasure you were looking for was scattered along the way. Go back and find what you were looking for. And it was like, he was pushing everybody away. I don't need that. I don't need these close ties. I don't need these personal connections. I don't want to share stories and food and this thing with you and like deep conversations. I'm on my way up to the top of this mountain. Whatever that treasure is, like, that's what's for me. And he gets up there and he realizes like, oh, fuck. All those were the treasure. Like, I was supposed to be digging and prospecting on my way up here so that I have a foundation for when I am up here. When I do have the success, I'm able to look around and actually feel the way I thought I was going to feel. And it's everything outside of the money that actually did it for you, that allows you to actually enjoy the money.
What does that make you think about the Hormozi interview?
I think he's optimized his way as best as he can around meaning. Like, everything except meaning, I'm going to do amazingly. And I'm just going to kind of leave meaning for somebody else or maybe another time.
There's a lot of people that were deeply inspired from him and from other people. I think, like, for example, Gary Vee also was very hustle minded and very sacrifice heavy.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're saying like, hey, that might actually be valuable to you.
The glorifying of it and making it a religion is not valuable. Sacrifice is absolutely necessary, but let's call it like jacking off to hustle culture and grind porn is what's absolutely not necessary. And it becomes a masturbatory experience. I talk to friends about this, like with ayahuasca journeys who've done 50 something of them. At some point, you're just jacking off to this thing. And we have to find the areas in which I'm just jacking off to this thing to, like, cause I need to feel pain in order to feel gratified in my success. There's a masochism, I think, attached to success a lot of times now.
What's the advice you give to 20-year-olds? Because I imagine you interact with a lot of 20-year-olds that want to be successful. They're interacting with you because they want to be successful.
Yeah.
But you're holding the standard of saying, hey, make sure you're actually defining who you want to be, because maybe what you want or what you're saying you want isn't accurate. What do you say is accurate? Like, what is the thing that they should actually chase?
Meaning, purpose. And that's so, I know it's individual, which is the hard thing. This is why, like, it's not super popular, but think about even the Hormozi thing, like, it still felt kind of vague, and I'm not quite sure what that is for you, but that's why it's an invitation to go on the journey is all you can kind of give anybody else. And you can be a guide on that journey, but it isn't something you can clearly define for somebody else, because I don't know what deeply matters to you. But once I know what deeply matters to you, then I can help you optimize for what that thing is. But it's different for everybody, because also, again, we're oftentimes covering up for core wounds that we had before. So the perfectionist usually needed to be perfect in order to feel safe and secured, and like my parents are going to love me again tomorrow is only if I bring home straight A's. It's only if I'm helpful. It's only if I act out and am crazy at school. My parents like are sitting down and like taking the time to chastise me, but at least they're sitting down and taking the time to like recognize me. And so we're covering up these things constantly. And we just build up lives where we don't actually have to address those things. We can keep those skeletons in the closet. We can keep the demons at bay by doing amazingly everything except for this one thing that causes me pain. And that's, I think, what we saw in the Hormozi interview. He, like, out in front of the world had to show, I've optimized for everything except for this. And I actually kind of want to stay away from it. And he was invited to start thinking about the journey. And really, that's all Tony Robbins did in that interview, was invite him to think about going on that journey for himself.
When's the last time you talked to your dad?
2 weeks ago, my brother's birthday.
Was your relationship with him positive growing up?
No. He was my superhero. But no, it wasn't positive. I held him in high regard because of who I wanted him and like hoped he was going to be. And that was consistently fallen short of. So I built up an anger and a resentment. It became like I'm going to do this without you. I'm going to do this because for a long time, like, success was, fuck you, I'm going to show you that I can do something different. And now I teach against toxic fuel for this exact reason. You can only get to a certain point by fighting against something. You have to decide what you're fighting for. And I had to go find that.
What was the motivator to be writing things down at 18? Who was inspiration for that? Where'd you get that from?
I was scared of getting it wrong. I saw neither one of my parents planned to be parents. And so again, I just saw what intentionality did with interviewing all those people and how much knowledge and wisdom I got to glean from these other people. Again, 43,000 years of life experience the average age of the person that I interviewed was 43, from the ones that I could remember vividly. And so I just multiply that by 1,000, and there's a vague number of 43,000 years of life experience that I just have floating around in my head that has helped me at least have guardrails of how to do things properly. So if I'm running from what my dad was, or if I'm running from the opposite of what my dad was, either one that I'm optimizing for something outside of me, I don't think is healthy. It's also me looking back at something else. So Tony Robbins in their interview talked about like the push versus the pull. So am I being pushed? Am I pushing away from something, or am I being pulled towards something? And that's the you in 20 years that I teach people about. That's your North Star. That's the thing I'm now pulling myself toward, regardless of what's back there. I'm really not running away from anything anymore. But again, I had to close myself off to my father to start learning about how do I get to the point of gratitude for what he was able to do. Also, like if my dad was 70%, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
So like I have to have a gratitude for that, because if my dad was great, I'd be doing something else. I'd be like full on into my marketing business, as opposed to like, I have this fucking itch. I can't not teach people in this way. I'd be doing something completely different. So the atrophying of that thing, the lack thereof that I needed to go back and heal and figure out for myself is what has pushed me into this thing. But now I'm pulling towards something else. So it's not being better than that, because that's a low fucking bar to set. But even if it's a high bar, I don't think that's the bar that should be set. How do I act this out in the way that I see me in 20 years being? And my job now is just to go earn him. That's now the thing that I'm being pulled toward. And that's what meaning and purpose can look like, is I just get to become him.
How do I know if the person I'm setting myself up to be in 20 years is a good person or a bad person? Like, what's the metric of that's a good thing, it's a worthy thing to set out for?
What would you want, only if it's actually true, the people closest to you who know you best to say about you? So I base it on 10 characteristics, and I have people grade themselves on a scale of 1 to 10, you versus your future self. How well are you acting out these 10 characteristics? So
can you lay it out?
Yeah. So if you, let's say your eulogy, and somebody's only allowed to come on stage and say 10 adjectives about you, descriptive words about who you are as a man. That's all anybody's ever allowed to say about you. And that's the lasting impression the world has of you. What would you want those 10 words to be? And I have people list out those 10 words. And for each one, I need to know why it's important, what your score is out of 10. Again, this is not you versus the average person. The type of guys I work with, if you compare yourself to the average man, you're already 10 out of 10. You're done. Like you don't need to do any better.
Yeah.
You versus your future self. And so I get a lot of 1s and 2s and 3s on here, because I know what I have inside of me. I know what I'm capable of. At my best, I'm this. Then I make them go through a hard realization where they have to realize things that they don't want to see about themselves. And I kind of trick them into telling me something about themselves that they don't want to admit. And I have to help them reconcile who they are at their best and who they are at their worst. But if I know who I am at my best, I know what I can start aiming toward. And the man who is just 10 out of 10 in all these areas, and I have to describe to Kyree how these things are acted out. So for each word, I have to, especially for ongoing clients, you then have to argue your score with me. So if you say you're an 8 and I believe you're a 4, you have to argue your score to me. And why have you been acting yourself as an 8 out of 10? You only have 20% more to go in 20 years. And you have to start articulating to me. You're either going to confirm or come into question what you actually believe about yourself. And I'm not actually tied to an outcome. My job is to cause friction. My job is to tell you what the standard looks like, what you've told me your standard is, and then cause friction along the way. And just little pokes and prods and make sure that you're that. And then you have to go out and live life and prove it to yourself, because I don't believe we are anything until it's tested. I can say I'm a patient person, but stick me in rush hour traffic and see if I'm a patient person. I can say I'm kind, but do I have a reason to be unkind to people? And I choose kindness instead. And that's for aggression. That's for loyalty. That's for being respectable. That's for being wise. I'm none of these things until they're tested. And so you have to go out and live life and actually run up against things and test these characteristics for yourself. That's why when you were talking about goals, I'm like, only talk about who you are, not what you're going to do. Because you naturally do the things that come along with who you are. We're all acting out our identities right now. If I'm a little fucker sometimes, it's because I've told myself I'm allowed to be a fucker because of these things that happened to me in the past. But if I change that, and I'm supposed to be a loving and kind and generous and honest and loving person, then I have to chase this thing, and I have to be continually proving to myself that I am these things.
Do you believe in that concept where someone can almost create themselves or recreate themselves into whatever attributes they want?
We're doing it every second of every day.
Do you think there's a natural tendency versus like whatever that characteristic I want to set. Like I can say I want to have the characteristics of a CEO.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's like, nope, you don't have that actual personality. I can say I want to have the characteristics of a patient, loving man when I really am an arrogant prick. So it's like, how do you balance your natural tendencies, both good and bad, with setting up the person that you actually want to be?
We start questioning what natural is. So if I say I'm naturally like this, I'll ask, who told you that? What caused you to believe that about yourself so far? So like if I want to be kind and compassionate, but I'm really kind of a fucking asshole, what taught me that being an asshole was the way to be? Because it's not natural. Like you have children. You see who we are naturally. And this is hard to explain. Again, I work with 20-year-olds who don't have kids. It would be so easy to explain this to another father and just say, when your children are just being the little cherubian, oh my God, you're the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen in my life. And you're the most pure version of who we are as human beings.
It's usually when they're sleeping.
A lot of times when they're sleeping, but like cuddled up on the couch, especially when they're sick and they can't be little fucker demons. Like that's when you realize like, oh, we aren't actually anything negative naturally.
Yeah.
That's all learned behavior.
Yeah.
We don't know racism. We don't know impatience. We don't like toddlers know impatience for sure, but it's a learned behavior, right? We're not getting a certain need met. So I develop this thing to get what I need. But that's what we're talking about when like anytime you came into adulthood as a little fucker, like as somebody who's an arrogant asshole piece of shit, there was something that you weren't receiving. And this is the way you learned how to get it. So I talk about a lot of times, like most men exist, let's say on a spectrum, but on one of two sides. They've either exchanged love for respect to get what they're looking for. So I'm willing to be less loved and more respected, or what at least I look at as respect, which is usually control. Or I've traded respect for love. I'm willing to be less respected so that I can have more what at least looks like love and attention. And most people are making one of these trade-offs for most of their lives until they realize like that you were making a trade-off and that you opted into something that you didn't necessarily need to, and that you've abdicated your authority over who you're becoming at some point, that you're just along for the ride. And I'm just going to be more and more of this. And I'm going to learn how to optimize around everything except this one thing I really don't want to look at. Back to like that demon in your closet.
What do you have people in your life that you genuinely respect and admire?
Yeah.
What are traits of them that you respect?
One thing that signifies to me that somebody's in that position is they could let me down. And I talk about this a lot with people who deal with getting let down a lot. If you can let me down, I have to believe something so positively about you that finding out something negative that you've done or that you are currently doing would be like devastating to what I believe about you. And there's not a whole lot of people that hold that position. But it lets me know that I've had enough interactions with you in enough scenarios and seen you when you didn't think that I was paying attention or looking. Maybe it was an offshoot comment that you made or an offshoot conversation that I heard you have with your wife in the other room that you didn't think I was listening to. That builds up a respect that I have for somebody, so much so that if they were to deviate from that, I would be disappointed, like really, really disappointed. And I think it's a high bar that I set. There's not a whole lot of people that could disappoint me because I don't know most people well enough and I don't care to know most people well enough. There's probably a bunch of things that kind of add into the stew of you're a person that I respect. But I have to see you in so many different scenarios, including difficult scenarios. We talked about people who are wildly influential who will never talk about the difficult things that they go through, or like you saying, I feel like I'm an insecure person and I feel like I carry that around with me and I act that out with me. We just don't have a whole lot of leaders who are willing to actually talk about these things, where they have questioned themselves, where they have had to wonder, or where they have been put in pressurized situations and have like really just had to act out the type of man they say they are.
I think in my life, I think when things get rough, that's when it's easier to embody those traits.
It's a good thing.
It's when things are easy. That's where I think it's hard to embody these things on a day in and day out basis. I think it's easy to step up.
There's a lot of like, I think about The Godfather, like you're a good peacetime consigliere.
Yeah.
He's a good wartime consigliere. Like we need him right now. We're in war. It's hard to optimize for like the easy times as well as the hard times.
Because there's more of them.
Yes. But there are some people who are the exact opposite. They can only do it when it's easy. And then when it's hard, they're like, fuck this. Like that's too difficult. And so I think both people have something else to optimize for. Like when you fill up that cup that you are naturally better at this thing, now my spillover can go toward nothingness and whatever, I'm just lazy, this doesn't matter. Or that same level of intentionality can also be put into the small things that you're telling yourself currently that can kind of slip off. That doesn't really need to be dialed in right now. That can become the new game that you start playing is, can I do this even in the really small pieces?
What percentage of men do you think are naturally intentional?
Most. It depends on where you direct it. So like, I think about the guy who like doesn't do much else besides drinking and video games. He's super intentional about those.
You don't think that's a state of numbness?
I don't think almost anybody's ever actually numb. I think we call it numb to save ourselves from saying it's super negative. Like it's depressed. Usually when somebody talks about being numb, I'm like, you mean depression? What you're explaining to me is a depressive state, but you're calling it numbness because that sounds more stoic. I don't know. Like it doesn't sound as good to say like I've really felt depressed this time. Like I haven't really felt like myself. And so in that depressive state, yeah, I think it's acting out of that. But like, if I can recognize the intentionality inside of that, even you're going to make time for this thing that's important to you. The thing that you can numb out on, you've made time for that. And you've set aside like an expertise for that. And you've exercised a precision for that. That's also allowed to lend itself over here. You just haven't given yourself permission to do that. So I try to call out the traits that I value seeing in that person, even if they're misplaced, because I can still see you doing it. I just don't see you putting it where you say you want it to be placed. And then how do we start moving things over? How do we start a reward system for this? Because we only do things that we're rewarded for.
I think there's a category of people where this is helpful and relatable because they are intentionally consuming content that is about personal development.
Yeah.
These are all themes of like, hey, I care about bettering myself. I don't think everybody thinks that they actually intentionally want to better themselves. I think the average person doesn't. They're waiting for something to fall in their lap in order for them to change.
I was going to say, like, it would be nice if it happened, but I'm not
going to go out and hunt for it. And so like the person that you're talking to, the people that you work with, they're people that are saying, I'm going to go hunt for it in some shape or form. And I haven't seen it happen, so I'm going to make it happen. Yeah.
Or I'm tired of it not happening. I think that's a lot of it. It's like, I know how lucky I've been to get to this level.
Yeah.
I don't trust myself to get any further because that's going to require a different thing from me.
And that's the success path.
Yeah.
What do you say to people that are not on that path? Like there's a guy that's probably listening to this and he's probably going to go to work at Subway and he knows he doesn't want to go work at Subway.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know that there's something different. There's a 30-year-old guy and he's, finishing up at Smoothie King. It's like he knows he doesn't want to do that.
Yeah.
What's accessible about the things you're talking about? What would you say to those types of guys?
What I'll say, this year's been the first time in a long time that I've intentionally tried to start connecting those dots for that man. But I've always felt this thing like most men exist here. Yeah. Most men are somewhere in this space where it's like, and maybe they don't want to. They don't want to go make $100K a month. They don't want to go do the big thing, but they want to feel involved in this game of manhood and masculinity and achievement, or just and whatever.
Some semblance of control.
Yeah. Like I want to feel like I have control over something. I think Jordan Peterson had a really good thing of this, like the 12 rules for life. And I think it's starting off with really, really small habits that most people will never do. And I think that's the hard thing with this group of people is you have to start with the small mundane things that you really don't want to do. And that excludes most people from even entering the sport.
Tell me what's a small thing that I can do if I just want to get started?
I mean, step one, cleaning your room, I think is one of the easiest things, but practically.
Why cleaning your room?
It gives a sense of order and control. This is the one thing I can control. I can't control what happens to me throughout the day. I haven't read the book, but what I assume is kind of the point of this is something I can exert my control over and I can be consistent at every single day. And it's super small and it's something that I can say, I've done this, I've achieved this. And a lot of guys go into it with fitness. I just had a call with a potential client for marketing last week And he was saying that like the rise in AI was going to like tank the bodybuilding industry. I was like, dude, that's what everybody's going to go back toward because they have control over it when they feel like they have control over nothing else. When they can't go get a better paying job, when they can't like, when they feel like this thing is taking over their entire lives, they're going to go flocking back to the gym because that's the one thing they can control and the one thing they can do and have a measurable impact on that makes them feel above somebody else, that they fit within this hierarchy somewhere other than the bottom. And I think, again, it's giving people something to hold on to that allows them to exert their will on the world around them. I think that's what most people, that's probably what would spark something for most of the guys that are in this space that we're talking about, is something that you know you can control the outcome of.
What are specific habits I can have that would make it impossible for me to not be successful as a man?
Again, willingness to shoulder responsibility.
Give me something specific. What are things to do that would make it statistically impossible for me to feel successful?
Nihilism. Avoiding nihilism. Nothing's allowed to not matter. I think it's one of the biggest things. What if everything mattered? What if everything I do mattered? And I just convinced myself. And whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. Everything I do matters. Because that's the thing. If you scan out far enough, nothing we do matters. And when you're allowed to get into that, nothing actually matters. So let me just do the thing today. Like Hormozy talks about this a lot of like, I'm just going to die and my body's going to decompose and none of it actually matters. So let me just go have fun while I'm doing it. I think doing the antithesis of that actually results probably in similar things, but actually the ceiling is much higher when everything has to matter. What if everything that I do is supposed to matter? Even if it only matters to me, it has to matter. Like what extra level of care do I have toward this thing? And then what extra level of control do I end up realizing I have over so many different things, including my emotions?
There's a gap between numbness and being at a place where you're like, yep, I'm down to write a letter to my 20-year-old self. There's a big choice there.
I think the choice is the thing. I think that is the spark that does it. And maybe it's trying out 10 different things so that one of them ends up mattering to you. But it's the unwillingness to even try the first thing because it sounds ridiculous that I think stops a lot of people. I'm not going to go write a letter to myself in 20 years. What the fuck is that? Like, what does that mean? This is all up in the air. This is for successful people. This is for others and not for me. And the danger is you can apply that anywhere. So anything I tell you, you can go do as a first step. You can write that off as it doesn't matter. So deciding that something has to matter, that you're forcing something to matter to you, I think is the first step in general. Then it actually doesn't matter what I say to go do first. If you act as though that thing matters and that is like the most potent thing you could possibly be doing right now, then you start learning how things mattering changes how you interact with them. And then that gets the ball rolling. It's a off and on switch. Either something has to matter or nothing's allowed to matter. And if you've convinced yourself that nothing's allowed to matter, it doesn't matter what the first step is. Maybe I can try to find perfectly fit for you, unique tulip, what's going to matter to you, pick up that first weight, go to that first church service. But if you convince yourself that nothing is going to change the way you feel about yourself and your life, I just don't think there's a first step to point to for those people. So even if you have to gaslight yourself a little bit into believing I'm just going to convince myself and drill it into my head, something has to matter. I have to pick something that's going to matter to me. What are you naturally adept at? What's the first thing if you never had to make money for the rest of your life, what would you go do? Go do one of those things. But I don't know what that is for anybody. I would say do the thing that gives you the highest chance of success on the first try.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Can you tell me some of your prompts? You're saying you have prompts for this letter to self. You have some things that you recommend for people. Like, what are some of the starting points, the firing guns questions that you suggest?
What are you excited for? The first one is, what are you excited for? And then I ask what your Sunday looks like and then what your average workday looks like. So you ask him that, yourself in 20 years. How do you interact with your wife and children? How do you interact with your friends? How do you interact with your business colleagues? What do you look back and what are you proud of me for? Me today, that I may not be thinking this thing in my past that I've overcome was a big deal. what are you in me in 20 years with the gift of hindsight? What are you proud of me for? And it's like, again, these are all things that you're starting to affirm for yourself. And you have to realize like, oh, the call's coming from inside the house in a positive way. Like I'm actually able to start interacting with these things differently when I set a little bit outside of myself. And I say, that's not me, that's me in 20 years. You end up realizing that's just you. All of it's just you. This whole conversation you're having right now is just in your head. And that's kind of the conversation I have with guys afterward of like, you made all this shit up. And it's so real because you stepped into it. It's like an amazing movie, but it's a movie that you get to control the steps of. Like you get to decide whether this becomes real or not. And I think that's the beauty of it, that you get to create this thing as if it was a work of fiction and then bring it into reality. I think that's one of the coolest fucking things I could possibly do as a human being, and then enjoy the process.
Do you think that people should stop chasing money?
No. People should stop deifying money, for sure. Acting as though money is an end result or an end goal, I think is dangerous. But chasing it, no, because it's super fucking fun. You like closing a big project?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so much fun to see that money come into your bank account.
Yeah.
No one can tell you anything different. And all the people who do are like rich assholes who came into it like from somebody else or they inherited it. The ones who try to tell you money doesn't matter at all. Stupid, silly. But I think deifying it is the danger. Is saying that like that's the end goal, like that's the massive thing, the massive number. I have a friend who exited his company 2 years ago. One of my best friends now. We met playing poker, and he exited for a very large sum of money in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And people ask, like, what's next? What's next for you? And he's like, I'm going to be a billionaire. Like the next number is $1 billion. And I heard him say it like 6 or 7 times, and I was like, dude, I was sitting next to you when $40 million got dropped into your account. I asked you what you were going to do, and you're like, I'm going to finish my martini and finish the cigar and hang out with you and probably go golf. I was like, I know the money doesn't do shit for you. He's like, it's kind of my cover story. And I was like, oh, that's like, for people who are really just dedicated to the thing, you still need to have a cover story because money matters to everybody else. And so I think there's a lot of people who do talk about money who you'd be surprised if you like got dinner with them, how little it actually matters and what little it actually does for them. Because they know that it's a game and they know they like, if I play it properly, yes, that's naturally going to become $1 billion. But I remember hearing it multiple times from him and just like, I hope he really doesn't believe that that's what he wants. And then I had to ask him about it afterward. He was like, fuck no, I don't give up. Like if that money dropped into my account tomorrow, am I going to do anything different? Am I not going to go to my son's soccer practice because I'm a billionaire now? Am I going to go leave my wife because of this? No, it doesn't actually do anything past a certain point.
How many measured millionaires do you know?
Measured?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
As in like, they genuinely do have a good head on their shoulders.
I've met more depressed millionaires than living wage men for sure. Somebody doing $1 million a year. Yeah. I'd say a fifth are like, they can really enjoy it as if it still matters to them. I'd say about a fifth of them. The other ones are stressed out to the fucking max. Scared that they didn't deserve to be here in the first place. And scared that they'll never be able to recreate it and that they'll be found out as a fraud of some sort. Yeah.
Did you rewrite who you want to be in 20 years? Do you often rewrite that, or do you just act out that same process?
I'll probably do it every 5 years. Yeah. I think it's something that continually needs to update. But again, once you have the basis of it, like the core of it doesn't change. Maybe a few things become more important.
What do you think you're going to write in there?
Well, now it's going to encompass my wife's best friend and her 2 kids. Since last time I wrote it, I was only thinking about my own kids and my own family. Now we kind of have adopted another family in some cases. I talked about this when I lost a friend in 2024 who killed himself, left his wife and kids behind.
Do they live with you?
No, they live down the street from us. That's why like it's hard to say, but like some of the fatherly responsibility is going to fall on me and going to continue. And I've chosen that. And so that's a new
What does that look like?
thing. Spending time mostly. Also, it's a lot of preparing for future conversations. And like he gets in trouble at school. He got in trouble at school probably like 6 months ago. And she was traveling in New York. The mom was traveling in New York. He's 5. And such an asshole. My friend died 3 days before Father's Day and 3 weeks before his son turned 4. And their daughter doesn't remember him. Their son definitely remembers him. And so their pain is going to be way different. She's missing a dad she doesn't know. He's missing a dad that he absolutely knows, and that was his superhero. But he knew that his mom was traveling. And so the teacher says, I'm going to call your mom about how you've been at school today. And he goes, that's okay. She's in New York. Like, she can't come here anyway. And so mom calls me. I was actually in Phoenix for meetings. And she calls me and she's like, hey, I need to pick him up from school today. And I said, okay, call him and tell him that I'm picking him up from school, because I knew it was going to scare the shit out of him. Uncle Kyree's coming. And I'm not like some hard ass anything, but he is kind of scared of me. He's in love with my daughter. As soon as she said, Kyree's going to come pick you up. No. I thought Uncle Joey was coming to pick me up, her brother. And she's like, nope, Kyree's coming. And he's like sweating throughout the day. And I go pick him up. He goes, Kyree. I said, what's up, bud? How's your day at school? And he immediately looks at his teacher. I was like, let's go. We got to talk. And so we get back out in my truck and I strap him in and I give him a hug and I go, so what happened? And he talks me through it and he's all sad and he's like kind of scared of what I'm going to say. What am I going to do? I've never had to chastise him before. And we talk through it. I'm not mean. I don't yell. I'm not that person anyway. But he realizes why that's not allowed to happen anymore. And I said, what are you supposed to be? He said, a respectful man and a respectable man. And I said, good, you have to be both of those. That's what we're trying to become. And I said, what do you think your dad would want me to help you be? He said, a good man. And I said, and what is a good man? And we kind of list out the things the characteristics of a good man and who he is. And then he gets to now tell me. So same thing I do with my clients. I'm not going to tell you who you're supposed to be. You reflect to me who you think you're supposed to be. And I do the same thing with him, so that it's not my words telling him who he's supposed to be or how he needs to act this out. His words tell him how to continue acting this out. Because if it's mine, it's not yours. And if it's not yours, you won't care for it as if it was.
Do you have guilt over him dying?
Fuck. No, but I did it first. And I've had to really walk through that. Because of who I am and what I do for a living, that was the most natural reaction, was what could I have done differently? What should I have done differently? And I know wholeheartedly, in talking to myself and in talking to his wife, it would have never been accepted. And I offered multiple times. My support to him was silent in that he didn't smoke cigars. He would ask me for a cigar sometimes. And I just knew that meant the world was getting kind of heavy and he just needs to be around a friend. He didn't play poker. He would ask if I wanted to go to the casino every once in a while and go play some blackjack. Neither one of us play blackjack. But I knew that it's just, he needed community around. But I knew that trying to address the thing that he was uncomfortable saying would have pushed him away. And maybe I could have forced it. But I think forcing it would have forced them away from us. And we'd already had as much friction as I think our friendship could have handled. We've talked about it on a podcast, so I don't mind saying it here where she's talked about it. Like they had domestic issues in their relationship since the beginning. And we became aware of it one day. And I told her, before he's allowed in my house again, he and I have to have a man-to-man conversation about it. And it was not an easy one. And it was also not easy for him to reach out. I said he has to reach out for that conversation, knowing full well they would probably never speak to us again. Because that's not a thing you want to talk to somebody else about. And like have another man tell you how to be and that you have to do this in order to be around us. Like for most men, fuck you. Don't ever talk to us again. And that was his snap reaction. And she actually posed the question to him, like, do you actually want us to be supported? Like these people are willing to still be here for us. But what ended up happening, and I think is a danger for a lot of people, is if you remove the thing that you use to drown out the demons and you don't choose to then contend with them, they just get louder. And that story that you continue to tell yourself, that I'm not worth any of this, that I don't deserve any of this that I've built, that I'm not allowed to have what I currently have around me. I'm not allowed to actually step into it the way that I desire to because I'm not worthy of having that. It's a dangerous place for people to get into. And so I did carry around a lot of guilt. Should I have done something else? Should I have said something else? Should I have at least attempted? But I don't choose to carry that burden around. My burden is, how do I act out who you wish you were able to become for your wife and for your kids?
What is your plan to father, his kid?
I think being same thing for my kids, be who I needed. So be who he needed. And that was like the big tragedy, was he was so scared of his son becoming him. I was like, you just put the shit on fucking hard mode for your son. Luckily, he has a support system. I think it gave some sort of solace in that, like, he knows his wife and kids are taken care of.
Yeah.
He knows that there's a good standard that's going to be set. He knows that I was willing to take up my own version of that. And his son asked me the day after he died if I was his dad now. And I immediately had to go into that place of like, no, but yes, kind of, but definitely not. And I'm not here to replace, and I'm not here to take his place. And I always reference back to him whenever I'm teaching his son something. What would a daddy have wanted? And I want like that image until he's older and can understand and contextualize who his dad actually was. I want to save who he believes his dad was for as long as possible. Now replace family and job with money. If I have the thing in front of me that I said was going to fill the void and I still feel it, how do I contend with that? And again, if you haven't learned to rewrite the stories, if you haven't learned to contend with those friction points in your identity, the fragments and fractures in your identity, if you haven't learned how to contend with those things and have the proper conversations around them, something cracks. And that crack may take a long time to manifest, but that's a dangerous place for a lot of people to be in. And again, this is why I have these conversations. It's usually late at night with a guy driving a sports car around Miami and ends up at the end of some road and goes, Kyree, I don't know where to go from here. And I've had 15 of these conversations over the last 7 or 8 years. I've met a lot of men at that crossroad, and they have to come up with an answer. And so the one thing I leave them all with is, you have to call me tomorrow, because they have to dig through whatever waits for them when I hang up the phone. And there's some of these I've stayed on the phone for 5-6 hours, and I don't desire to do this every single day of my life. But in the right moments for the right people, I've been able to have those conversations. Having people gift themselves the starting point, which is I'm allowed to have something I haven't given myself permission to have before, is kind of the starting point.
I admire how you process responsibility. You see it as a privilege. I think I struggle to see it as a privilege.
And that's scary.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I can't handle it, then what happens?
I don't think I think that far.
Okay. But why is it scary then?
I'm in a season of constantly confronting what feels like inability to accomplish the handling of the responsibility.
Mm.
And so I was even talking to Erica last night. I was talking to my wife. We've had like a 2-week period. I've been very heavy in work. And I'm like, all the things I want to be good at, if you took the last 2 weeks as like the example of it, I failed in all the categories. Like, I want to be a really great dad. And if you look at the amount of time I spent with each of the kids and the way I spent the time, didn't embody that. I want to be a great husband. I didn't embody that. I want to be really successful in my business, and I don't feel like I embody it. Yeah. And so I'm feeling the inadequacy I feel, but I feel challenged by the privilege you feel.
Do you think I work harder than you?
I don't know. I think you work differently.
Yeah. I doubt I work harder than you.
Yeah.
So if you are acting out more of the hard work capacity, then hard work isn't the thing that gets you what you say you're looking for. It's soft skills. And if you were to start, and this is like hopefully a thing of hope, if you started over the next month just squeezing out more of that intentionality that you're talking about with your family, with your wife, and with each one of your children, in 6 months, do you think they'll ever remember how you're feeling right now? Or the weight of what you're feeling right now?
I don't know if they feel it now, but I feel it.
Yeah.
I don't like feeling it.
Yeah. What's the remedy? I think we often think it's a bold shift. It's a massive thing I have to go do, a statement, right? But I think about this when I was first talking about losing weight, I would always post on Facebook. I'm starting my new diet on Monday. It lasted like 5 days. I'd buy all the stuff, I'd do all the supplements and everything, and it would fall off. And one day I turned around and I was 100 pounds more than when I said I was going to start losing weight. And as soon as I decided I was just going to start doing the thing and not post about it, I said I wasn't going to post about it until I lose 100 pounds and get back to the point at which I said I needed to start losing weight. I didn't post about it until I hit the 100 pounds. The ability to just do the thing and not need to make it a big whatever, just have the shifts, the small things, the small habits, my diet, working out, whatever I needed to do, just had to happen quietly in my own head so that I could alleviate the stress that I was feeling. So I think it's going back to the same thing that we've been talking about. Who am I actually? If I'm a present father and a present husband, then I need to start acting out in little ways that I can manage with my busy schedule. Because it's not that I can't do any more than I'm doing right now, but because I've taken on such a big burden and I've told myself I have to do this big thing, I won't do the little things that actually matter. And so my submission to you would be to just do the little things that actually matter, even if they don't realize it. I think you give yourself 6 months of the little things and you'll see the big things start to happen.
For example, optionality. It's a big desire of mine. For some reason, that's associated with like peace, like the ability to feel like I have more options than the path set. I'm in a state of, I feel like the past few years, it's like, I just have to do this thing. I don't have any choice. I don't like it. I have to do this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm very jealous, like sinfully jealous of successful people, financially or not, that have the ability to say, I don't have to do that thing if I don't want to, that have the ability, that feel the ability to say no.
Not being able to see the label from inside the bottle is a big piece here. Their stresses are just different. They feel trapped by things that you don't feel trapped by. He's talked about it on the podcast. Ask Cole about when he wanted to become a real estate mogul and all these Airbnbs and rental properties. To other people, like I had a friend come to me and was like, dude, I heard Cole bought 40 something houses and blah, 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 blah. This is fucking incredible and amazing. I was like, go talk to him about it. And he's friends with Cole. He's like, nightmare. Stay away from it. I hate it. It was the worst decision I've ever made. But I was like, you think that he has the freedom, that he doesn't have any of these pressures on him. His look different than yours. And so you aspire toward his. But there's that whole thing of like, if we all threw our problems out in the middle of the table and the other person threw theirs out, we'd come like climbing over the table to grab ours back. I don't want yours and you don't want mine. But I have to be just responsible for mine and not compare them to everybody else's. Because I'm not comparing my problems to anybody else's problems. I'm comparing my problems to their ability to mask how big their problems actually are. Or manage them genuinely. Not everybody's masking them, but like I'm comparing myself to a figment of my imagination. It's like my reality versus somebody else's highlight reel. This is what social media does. But this is why you should have genuine conversations with people who you believe to be ahead of you in some way. And you'll quickly start to realize from talking to a lot of these people like, oh, yours are just different than mine. It's just not the same. He also doesn't have kids. He also like isn't married yet. Like there's a lot of things that everybody else has to account for or that we have to account for that other people may not. I think our job is just to take on the next little bit of responsibility and learn to contend with that. And then the next bit and learn to contend with it. And each one is a growing process. Each one is brand new. It's like buying a new pair of shoes when you're a kid. Buy a pair of shoes that's a little bit too big for you so that you have room to grow into them. You have to take on challenges that are a little bit too big for who you currently are so that you can grow into them. It doesn't mean you have to go buy the big clown shoes. If I bought size 15s when I was 6, I'd have a really rough time walking around. But I just buy the next size up. And I think that's our job. That's how you start growing in masculine leadership. Just buy the next size up and contend with it and grow into it and have a support system around you that cultivates that in you and that you can have these conversations with on or off camera.
Kyree, I appreciate you. I think the wisdom you have is an overflow. The amount of people that are who they say they are in every space, in every context, is becoming fewer and fewer. And so I think anyone that follows you will experience that in you. And I'm just grateful that you could share some of this wisdom today. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Again,
love you, dude.
Lighthouses. Love you, man.
Yeah.